The Remington Park Futurity coverage on StallionResearch.com is brought to you by the Sire Freight Train B, standing at Cox Stallion Station in Kaplan, Louisiana. On the preview of the upcoming 2020 Remington Park Futurity, we're going to look at the qualifiers 1 through 10 here on StallionResearch.com. Starting with the fastest qualifier from the second night of trials is the $115,000 Heritage Place yearling graduate by the name of Mr. Apollo Jess. The apolitical Jess Colt roared down the straightaway at Remington in his trial under jockey Juan Polito, stopping the clock at 16.831 seconds as the fastest overall time in all of the trials. But make note of the fifth overall qualifier, Nash Ridge, here finishing second, is from the barn of Stacy Capps, comes out of this race to make the field as the fifth fastest qualifier. Now switching to the first night of qualifying, we find the fastest qualifier from night one, from the barn of Trey Wood, another apolitical Jess Colt by the name of Especially Jess, with jockey Jose Alvarez aboard, the same duo who won the Oklahoma Futurity earlier in this meet, which puts in maybe the most visually impressive of all of the trials to stop the timers at 17.016 seconds for the 330 yards to qualify as the second fastest overall going into the finals. And we are going to take a timeout right here and come back to look at the rest of the field going into the Futurity after these words from our sponsor. Standing in Kaplan, Louisiana at Cox Stallion Station is the hottest sire in the country by far, the ultra-impressive Freight Train B. Sire of last year's All-American Futurity winner, Whistle Stop Cafe, Freight Train B was in the top 3 of all leading sires of money earners of 2020 and was the number 1 leading sire of 2-year-olds in 2020. He's also the sire of the Grade 1 $1 million Heritage Place Futurity winning BV Midnight Express, the earner of over $769,000 on the racetrack. And already in 2021, Freight Train B is still making headlines, as 2 of his sired runners, Reimagine and Trapper John, have both made the finals of the 2001 Remington Park Oklahoma-Bred Futurity. A top runner in his day is now siring top runners of today. Standing at Cox Stallion Station in Kaplan, Louisiana, one of the nation's top sires, Freight Train B. And we're back and looking at the third overall fastest qualifier from the barn of Jose Lopez, the $29,000 Heritage Place graduate Reimagine, who is by Freight Train B and gets down to business in the stretch of this 330-yard trial with jockey Francisco Calderon in the irons, stopping the clock at 17.085 seconds as a second fastest from night one, but the third overall. And then there's the fourth qualifier, EM High Country, from the barn of Tammy Johnson by the sire Doc's Best Card, who is tested in the stretch in his trial, but repels the challenge of his rival to win in a time of 17.088 seconds to qualify as the second fastest from the second night of trials, but the fourth overall, and picks up jockey Rodrigo Vallejo for the finals. Now the fifth fastest qualifier, Nash Ridge, who was previously mentioned as the runner-up finisher in the trial that included the overall fastest qualifier, Mr. Apollo Jess, was the third fastest qualifier from the second night of trials, and StallionResearch.com was able to talk with jockey Rolando Raules about his mount going into the finals.
Nash was his first race in the trials. He stood really good in the gates and broke on top. He got a little green. I think next race he'll be a lot better. He showed a lot of run. He was always want to run. Always he really liked training and being really smart. So we thought he was our best chance on qualifying with him. And he's showing that he can run.
That leads us to the sixth fastest qualifier, Dreams of the Heart. The Coronado Cartel gelding from the barn of D. Keener takes command in mid-stretch with jockey Raul Valenzuela aboard and powers home a winner in a time of 17.115 to be the sixth fastest going into the Remington Futurity. Now the seventh fastest qualifier is Trapper John. Another Freight Train B colt, hailing from the Eddie D. Willis barn, sprints clear of the field in his trial event to post a time of 17.116, making him the seventh fastest overall in the list of qualifiers for owner James Sills. and the 8th and the 9th fastest qualifier come out of the same race. The 8th fastest overall is First Prize Dash 2 from the barn of Manuel Rodriguez with jockey Raul Rodriguez Jr. in the irons, who qualifies in a time of 17.146 seconds as the Apolitical Jess colt crosses a line in first in the trial, followed right behind with the 9th fastest qualifier, another Apolitical Jess colt named AJ's Trace of Paint from the barn of Troy Carter, with James Flores aboard, stopping the timer at 17.158 seconds. And the 10th fastest qualifier is San Lorenzo Tay. The Ivory James gelding, owned by Rogelio Marquez Jr., has a disastrous start at the break, dropping to his knees, qualified 10th with a time of 17.168 seconds, and picks up the riding assignment of Augie Silva in the finals. And be sure to watch the recap of the finals of both the Remington Futurity and the Remington Derby here on StallionEsearch.com. Standing in Kaplan, Louisiana at Cox Stallion Station is the hottest sire in the country by far, the ultra-impressive Freight Train B. Sire of last year's All-American Futurity winner Whistle Stop Cafe, Freight Train B was in the top 3 of all leading sires of money earners of 2020 and was the #1 leading sire of 2-year-olds in 2020. He's also the sire of the Grade 1 $1 million Heritage Place Futurity winning BV Midnight Express, the earner of over $769,000 on the racetrack. And already in 2021, Freight Train B is still making headlines, as 2 of his sired runners, Reimagine and Trapper John, have both made the finals of the 2001 Remington Park Oklahoma-Bred Futurity. A top runner in his day is now siring top runners of today. Standing at Cox Stallion Station in Kaplan, Louisiana, one of the nation's top sires, Freight Train B.